Because if you think of like poison oak, when you're walking around in a forest, right, it's just all over the place. And so
I don't walk around in forests, by the way.
welcome back. This is Karen Wood, and I'm excited you're here. We are in the Podcast Layer Studios, and I am with Jeremaine Jackson, our co-host.
Co-host Wood, I am so excited to be back with you again, talking about the brain, hearing what goes on in your office. So I'm excited for us to see what note we got from the couch today.
So today's note from the couch. So we're going to share with you things people say in my counseling sessions, and then talk about what we did in the counseling session, and then invite you to learn the same things. So today's quote is, drum roll, I need to build a tree instead of a bush of poison oak.
Poison oak?
I need to build a tree instead of a bush of poison oak.
I can sense this is going to be a good one.
I'm not a poison oak fan.
No one should be.
Yeah, I got fired one time because I got a case of poison oak.
Yes.
That didn't go over real well. So what we're talking about is a mom who lives in a ranch. We're going to call her the ranch mom.
Okay.
And she is learning more about her brain and her reactivity. And that the point of today's podcast is when we have thoughts, they are like neurons in a tree form. So if you kind of hold your hand up, you're kind of making the tree of all these neurons, and the thought goes this way, this way, this way, and then they connect in this way, and they work by habit. And unless we stop using those negative thoughts, they're going to keep building it. And her point was, hers has so many thoughts, it doesn't even get to tree state. It just makes this little firing bush that causes so much trouble. And what we're talking about in this podcast is how to think about it and make new neuron trees. I got this idea from Dr. Carolyn Leaf when I saw her speak a few years ago. And she talked about neurons being like trees. And our job is to notice the destructive ones. The trick is we have to not use them before they go away. And that's what this mom said was so hard, is because she has so many little ones.
Okay, wait, back up. You lost me a little bit. Neuron tree. We need to use them before we lose them. We need to break that down a little bit more.
If we keep using the same negative thought,
okay,
it keeps multiplying with all the memories of those negative thoughts. And then when that thing happens, poof, there's my complaint habit.
Always
there's my reaction habit.
Always the same, like a negative Nancy.
A negative Nancy tree.
Yes, a negative Nancy tree.
Negative Nancy neuron tree.
Huh.
And so the ranch mom's query in this session was, how do you do it when it happens so fast and it goes so many different places and there's so many negative thoughts? How on earth do you get it to not be in that poisonous state all the time?
Wow, that's heavy.
Because when I said to her, you just got to not use those thoughts anymore, her comment was, well, there's so many. Because if you think of like poison oak, when you're walking around in a forest, right, it's just all over the place. And so
I don't walk around in forests, by the way.
Well, I do. I went on a retreat one time, and I went to rescue Mount Herman's grove, this beautiful redwood grove with all the ivy growing up in the trees. And so I took my breaks and went and ripped out all the ivy out of the trees so that these beautiful redwoods could grow.
Why? Oh, ivy kills the redwoods.
It kills any tree.
It kills any tree. I'm not a forest guy. I'm a city boy.
I'm explaining that to you.
Okay, gotcha.
Think huge, beautiful redwoods. All the beautiful cottages put ivy. Oh, yes, I am on a squirrel.
You went somewhere.
I went on a squirrel
I forgot what we were even talking about.
So I'm in Mount Herman.
Okay.
Conference Center. And I'm ripping out all the ivy. So I'm changing a bit of the story from oak to ivy, but you get the point.
Yeah, squirrel.
It's a complete squirrel. And I came home with the worst case of the itches.
Of the poison oak?
And the flame. It was probably ivy, but it's all the same when it's horrible. And it's just all over. And
that's why I don't go out in mountains and stuff. Wood.
I know the trees are happy.
Okay.
I just noticed our new squirrel has a handle. It's very, very convenient for my stories. I can hang on to it for a long time. Okay, end of the ivy story. The point is, it's bad. It takes over. It's very destructive. And so Ranch Mom was wanting to know, with all these thoughts, there's so many of them. What do I do with them?
Right.
And she was so distressed because when I started saying to her, as some of you have heard a little bit now, hey, can you take each of these tension thoughts and put them into boxes? Her poisonous bush worked so fast to divide them. So what we decided was those are actually like mini boxes.
Right.
She's got one topic and it just spreads just into all these mini topics. So, okay, so then how do we take care of all the mini topics? How can we break those down and identify what those mini topics are? And that's where we come back to in the session. I helped her realize, are there different body tensions that happen for all these different little things that just fire off on her so quickly?
Wow.
And head into this poison oak bushland of her mind, right? So we wrote down the boxes, wrote down the little mini boxes, and started talking to each of the mini boxes. So let's think about something going on in your life.
In my life?
Yes. So you're working at a church.
I do.
And we've got a lot of rain in California right now.
And our church has some leaky roof. A leaky roof.
So we're talking a leaky roof. That's our big box. But talk to me about the mini boxes. What are all the other things that become poison oak bushes in your head when you start thinking about this leaking situation?
Well, there's multiple leaks. We kind of are finding more leaks every time it rains.
Yes.
Prior to me getting there, last winter, it had rained when they first started noticing all these leaks, and it actually ruined a keyboard.
Oh, ouch.
It dripped on the keyboard, and when they walked in Sunday morning, keyboard was ruined. And now I'm finding there's leaks throughout the building, and it's a big auditorium, and the roof is very expensive to fix, and we're just trying to figure out what the best.
It's a highly designed roof. It's just very architecturally very interesting. It's not just your flat warehouse roof.
No, not at all.
It's just really a beautiful architectural structure. And so that makes more boxes because you're going to have things destroyed if the leaks come back. How's it going to go on Sunday morning when leaks are hitting people in their head? What else are you thinking about that become these mini boxes?
So what you're saying is kind of, we have these big issues in our life, whatever those big issues are. But many times those bigger issues, we can break those down into all these mini boxes to where we can deal with it easier. It helps us kind of process it easier if we're not looking at kind of this whole thing. We want to break it down and say, here are all these little things that actually are building up to this big explosion. So let's start to handle and take care of some of these littler things. Is that kind of?
It's exactly it, because the big box is the roof. And then we've got equipment. We've got, how are we going to do this event? We've got staffing. We've got money. There's so many other big boxes. And then under each of those is these little micro boxes. And that's what she was talking about. That started feeling like poison oak to her because she didn't think she could handle it or bring it back or all those things. So roof is a good example. And then the point is to realize what about it becomes toxic. That's the poison oak part. What about it becomes feeling like it's very dangerous, not able to be handled? I can't do this.
Right.
And that's where we can get into some of the definitions of trauma that they're redefining. It's not so much the big event that may have happened in your life, but it's if you have the ability to process it and deal with it. And that's what creates the trauma. So what we're talking about is, how can she notice these neurons that are firing so quickly? So we're trying to find the topics. We break it down by topic. And then we're trying to find what is my body reaction to all of them. So that my amygdala, remember that limbic system, that amygdala, like thumb and fingers up, your nail beds, it's remembering this certain level that set point of reactivity we talked about. For every one of these boxes has a set point of reactivity.
Yeah. Now you mentioned also how like that physical response that our body has. Does your body have a physical response based on the problem or the situation, or does everybody kind of respond with my head always hurts or wherever they respond at? How does that?
Depends. We've got some basic fundamental things that make us all good humans. Example for that is if pretty much anybody, if they're walking with a little kid in their hand and a car comes, what is the instinctive response?
Oh, you want to, the kid walks
you just
on the
yank, you just get that kid out of there without much thought, right? So that's our basic human interaction defense mechanisms. And then we all have what we've been through that kind of adds to it, makes it better, warps it. And that's where those neuron trees start to become trouble, holding up my hand like a tree, because it's going to keep going. So talking about that neuron tree, I'm holding my hands up. The trick with Ranch Mom was saying that they all fire so fast and it's kind of the same topics, and she doesn't know how to rewire it so that they don't. And the reason her quote was so important, I need to build trees instead of poison oak, is because it feels that dangerous to even start trying to not use those neurons anymore. Because there's so much poison oaky danger attached.
Poison oaky danger.
Stay tuned. You're going to learn a lot of good English.
Not the poison oaky danger.
A lot of good words are going to come into your life hanging around me.
T-shirt right there.
All right. That's a t-shirt.
Like if you have better, why do we not have worser?
Yeah. What? Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Better or worser?
Yes.
Worser's not a word?
No.
Oh.
And if it is now,
I
says the squirrel.
I definitely use worser.
So we should come up with t-shirts with the squirrel.
Right?
Better, worser.
Worser. I like it. So I think what's really interesting about this session or this note from the couch is how we've taken this neuron and now it's a tree, and you're able to kind of explain like all these branches. The branches are the neurons, right? So
right.
I'm trying
millions of them,
and they just kind of just go off. And if we continue to almost water those branches with the same negative thoughts, they just continue to grow. Is that correct?
And they expand. And so how do we not use them? Because we have to not use them before they will go away.
So how do we interrupt that? How is that interrupted?
We have to kind of think of a new tree.
Okay.
So if I have a tree of complaint, driving is a good example. And the language we share when we're driving, when we get frustrated. That's an example. There's another neuron going this way and this way and this way already, just because the guy pulled in front of me, right? Notice it's a guy just pulled in front of me. Yeah, I thought you'd appreciate that. That's a habit of thought.
Yep.
So what happens if every time that happens, I switch to a compliment in my mind? I am thankful that didn't turn into anything. So if a guy pulling in front of me is my set point of reactivity of an 8, which it is for me, because I do a lot of commuting, what happens if every time that happens, I think of a compliment or a gratitude? So now I'm using, instead of that limbic amygdalic complaint neuron tree, I'm using my frontal lobe, which takes a lot of different kinds of neurons to fire, so that, hey, can I teach this neuron right here that I would like you to only go to a 6 when a truck cuts in front of me? And I want this neuron to automatically do a gratitude of an 8. I'm thankful that didn't turn into an accident. I'm really grateful where I'm going today. This morning there was this big clouds in Fresno, and big stormy clouds, and then this huge, beautiful rainbow, right? So I was just working on listing my gratitude about that beautiful rainbow and what that means. Because people of faith know that's a promise for better things to come, right? So instead of griping about the guy who just cut me off, I was using different neurons to go to different gratitude for spiritual blessings. And right.
So as we create new habits, then we build new neurons?
Yes, brand new neuron trees. But it's going to take a good long time not to use these ones.
Yeah.
My good indicator, spiritual confession,
Nice breathing.
Thank you.
Nice breathing.
Is that's reactivity scale 0 to 10. I can tell from my language which reactivity point I'm at, and I won't share that with you. But I can tell exactly what my nice Christian girl language shouldn't be at 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Shouldn't, right.
But that's a good indicator for me when I'm driving. If that guy cuts me off and I say, blah, 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 oops, that is my 9. Wait, I don't want to be a 9 anymore. Move my shoulders, part of a new neuron, right? Instead of gripping that steering wheel and that's a whole new, that's the old neurons. New neuron, gratitude, I'm safe. Gratitude. Here's another good challenge if you have somebody like that to build new neuronal trees is, can I pray a prayer of blessing over him at that moment? Yeah. You can see what a different neuronal path that is of asking the Lord to bless that guy and his day.
Yeah.
But you can see how that tells that neuron of reactivity, I don't need you anymore. I know you're just protective, but I really don't need you anymore.
The power of renewing the mind.
It is the power of renewing the mind.
That is so incredible.
And being more Christ-like in everything, which I lose when I'm driving because I have the habit of being in danger when I'm driving. I have the habit of living with a precious soul who is kind of a reactive driver himself. Exhale with me. So I have a bunch, you can hear the neuron trees there. It's my neurons don't know if I'm with this dangerous person I often drive with, or if that guy that just cut me off is the trouble, or if the guy tailing me too close is the trouble. Ooh.
And all that's happening just like in milliseconds.
And they're trained habitual neuronal trees of my instinctive reactions. My good reaction is like the kid, you're walking the kid and here comes the car. Yes, thank you, brain. You want to protect me while I'm driving. But all my neuronal habits of all these years are not good, and I don't want them anymore.
Wow.
But I'm really working on not even having to say any exclamation of any point. Why do I have to say anything? The guy just cut me off. Why can't I just have an acceptance fact? The guy cut me off. Why do I think I have to tell him he was raised in a barn?
You don't.
But my neuron tree wants to tell him all kinds of things, which is really silly. You can't hear me. Right?
Yeah.
I have actually wanted to design, okay, more confessions, flashing little lights, little, you know how they have that? We're now open. Have that on the back of my car that says you're too close, or a variety of other things.
LED screen.
And they don't just say you're too close now.
You can put whatever you want on there.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, anyhow, so old neurons, all these reactions to driving, because I've been in danger too many times, either with the person driving the car or the person in the other. How can I invite my brain to notice that tension? What's the outcome of the picture if I keep driving with all these 8 reactions? Step number 3, look at myself, even if it's a pretend picture. What would I look like asking the Lord to bless that driver and the rest of his day?
Yeah.
Then what neurons get to go? I'll tell you what, then I think of who else I've been praying for, and that starts firing off. And then I think of, okay, who else am I going to see in the office today? Let me think about how I can bless them. And then those neurons are not even firing in my brain at all.
And I think it's one thing, like when we're in our car and we're driving and a negative neuron goes off because somebody cut us off, and we're going to use all of these different F's and tell them to go live in a barn or all the things that we do. But it's a completely different thing when those neurons are firing off because you're in the house with your wife and you're upset, or your kids did something, or you're in a room with somebody, and now all of this happens. And now before you know it, it's not, that person's not driving off anymore. They're sitting right next to you.
Right there.
And then now we're in an argument, and now we're fighting, and now the kids are seeing us fight, and all of the stuff starts to happen.
And that's exactly what the ranch mom was talking about with this bush of poison oak, because it just happens so fast.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but can you use your tension at that moment to tell you which is the biggest problem?
Yeah.
And it might not be the biggest thing at hand. It might be that little thing we talked about before. If I can train my brain to notice that, what's the biggest problem right here? What is my mind having to defend me from right now? What is the danger?
Right.
I'll tell you, one of my dangers when there's a bunch of kids around, if some kid comes up to me, my own, when they were little, and does this on my shoulder to get my attention.
Oh, the tap tap?
Oh, you could just launch me. Because there's usually was so much else going on and then this. So then there was the practice of just say, hey, Mom, I need you. Mom, help me, right? But that was a physical response added to my physical tension of the time, right?
And I think I'm the complete opposite with like, I would love for you to come tap me on the shoulder. Don't yell at me across the room.
But it's not just a tap on the shoulder. It's the fire drill on the shoulder.
Fire drill.
Right.
Okay. That's a lot different.
When you're 4, you just want that person's attention, right?
Yeah.
So good point. It's one thing when I'm with the driver in the car and I could say, God bless you, and get on with my day in my mind. But poison oak bush, whoop, so many poisons happening.
And they're right there in the room with you.
But if I notice the tension, what is the biggest danger? What am I responding to? And then address that danger. If I can notice, how can I use that body to just bring everything down?
Yeah.
How can I invite other people to, hey, we all need to stop and go get a drink of water? Because a drink of water is so important. You can do it in the car, but it's also a tool you can use when you're in a poison oak bush situation. Because that glossopharyngeal nerve goes from your ear to your throat.
Say that one more time.
One of my favorite body parts. The glossopharyngeal nerve.
Explain it to us.
Well, if you can say Tyrannosaurus Rex, you can say glossopharyngeal. That is just a little squirrel of knowledge.
Glossopharyngeal. Pharyngeal.
So pharyn means it's all part of this neck thing, right? So it's a nerve that goes from here to here. You're on an airplane and you start yawning to crack your ears open, right? That's that whole system. So this nerve can help you in the poison oak situation. So that nerve in your throat can really help you if you're feeling that poison oak bush moment. So many things going on. Take a swallow. It tells all your organs, hey, we're actually not in danger right now. It kicks in that parasympathetic system.
That part.
It's your organs saying, hey, I can handle this. And then you can say, okay, bush, what is the biggest danger? What is the habit here? It's a lot of habits.
Yeah.
So if we can say, notice the tension. Here's our clear thinking coming in. What's the outcome of the picture if I respond to all the people in the room like this? Not going to be good. What's the outcome of the picture with acceptance? There's too much going on in this room right now. And somebody keeps driving at me, right? I choose the words driving very carefully because in my first example, the guy drove away. But in your house example, somebody's still driving at you.
That's a big difference.
It's a big difference. But if we can tell the brain, hey, it's feeling like a lot. It's feeling poison oak bushy. Then we can say, here's the one thing I'm going to deal with. Then I can deal with this thing. And I'm going to deal with this thing. And just start breaking it down by the biggest danger. And that's where you can use your tension because it might not be what seems like it should be the biggest danger at that point.
Right.
But it's what is that amygdala? Remember limbic system, that amygdala? Hold up your hand, finger, pinky, is the word I was looking for. And then we can say, what is the biggest danger right now? Because that's what the amygdala is going to be responding to with all the F chemicals, right? So if you're listening to this and you think, yeah, that really makes a lot of sense. I'm in poison oak bush situations where I've got so many old neurons firing off. And I have to invite the brain kind of one bush at a time. I liked her phrase, I need to build a tree, because you're actually asking, this is going to sound strange, but you're asking those complaints and those other things to become a little more noticed, which might think like you're reaffirming them, but you're really not. You're really saying, hey, this is who I want to be in that situation.
Right. Wow.
So go back to you're now in the house and all these things are happening. So what do you think would be helpful? Body, brain, or behavior, or belief at that point?
Man, let's start with the body. What does that look like?
So notice the tension. What is telling you I've got a poison oak bush sprouting up in my head of all these habits and all these not good neurons firing?
So we're noticing our response, how our body's responding is what you're saying?
If it's a danger situation, what chemicals are you able to feel? Fight, fright, freeze. That's when identifying the F is often helpful. But it's complex in the situation you're talking about because it might be all of them. And so sometimes I can just notice the tension. This thing feels more like fight to me. Okay, good. So now you've told the new neuron, how do I want to handle fight?
Right.
And that's what she's talking about, building the tree out of the bush. This is how I want to handle fight.
Wow.
Or if it's fright, you've got some kids who might be sick, or we've got some kids who are acting out, or there might be some fright things kicking in there. Or it might be pure flight. I just want out of this house and this situation right now, right? But if I can say, hey, flight neurons, this is who I would like you to be as a tree instead of this poison oaky bush, right? So that's how noticing the tension, step number 1 of clear thinking, can really help you figure out just what is the danger at the moment. Because that's what's going to help you do step number 2. Look at yourself and the outcome of the picture. If you stay in that state of danger, if you stay in poison oaky bush danger, what's going to happen? And our pictures are so much faster, then you can see it's not going to be good.
Right.
But that often helps you see, where is it not going to be good? Is it going to be directed at this certain kid? Is it a wife thing? That can sometimes help you figure out what that right eyebrow thing you have.
And
right
I think
there.
that's so helpful because like we know what we look like upset. We know what we look like angry.
But some people don't. When we're doing a session and I say to some people, hey, can you notice the tension? They cannot notice it.
Wow.
They're that disconnected from their body feeling
from themselves
that they can't notice it. So that's where we start. Hey, can you shift your shoulders a little bit?
Because when you say that, like I've made 1,000 pictures, right, of what I look like when Caden does this, or when Carter does this, or when Mason does this. I already know like how I react, right? So being able, and what you're saying, that first step of notice, being able to just notice how I feel when Mason does what Mason does. And then being able to ask myself, right, that question, like, what is the outcome of this? If I can't find acceptance in the fact that he's throwing a temper tantrum in this moment.
And you're actually building a new neuron tree when you say, what is the acceptance? See, because this neuron tree, the negative one over here, it doesn't have acceptance. It just has complaint. It has catastrophizing, assuming how bad this is going to be. It has depression. It has anxiety. It has all these other responses where when I say, what would I look like with acceptance? I'm actually changing neurons to run up to that frontal lobe and say, what could I look like?
Wow.
And now I'm on the top of my brain because I'm looking at pictures, occipital in the back. I'm shifting around. So I got that parietal lobe moving. Frontal lobe. What are the options here? So that's actually in the middle of all that chaos, building new neurons. That's what she meant by I need to build neuron trees.
That's amazing.
And come out of this scrubby oaky land of trouble. And so then what would I look like? Acceptance phrase. And then step number 4 is notice the tension. Because then I can say, is it different than when I started this analysis? Yes, my voice is not raised as high. I can see options. I'm shifting around. I'm doing better. Those are all things where your body is telling you, the amygdala is believing you, and it doesn't have to pump you with so many F chemicals.
Wow.
So that's the point of this session was scrubby oaky danger grows so fast and it's so entrenched. And how do I even get it to start growing into stronger neuronal trees? And acceptance is telling the brain I'm not in danger.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Nice work.
Is this a client that you're still seeing?
Yes, still seeing her.
And still helping her kind of build those new trees. No, that's important. I think, so what does it look like then for a listener? What would be that first step for them to say, I want to build a new tree. I want to build new habits. What would be that first step for them to do?
Is first think of isolating what attention is in a box. Because if you try to take your whole life and say, I'm building new neuron trees, it's not going to work. Too much danger. But I'm holding my hands up in a box for you audio listeners. How can I take what the deal is? Is it car trouble? Is it house is going to be a mess when I get home? Is it a financial thing? If you can narrow it down to a thing, or in our best English, a thinger dinger, If I can narrow it down, then I can say to the mind, that's what I want to think about when I want to build a new tree.
Right.
Or it might be a bunch of little boxes under that. That's fine with the little boxes. And then think of your acceptance process. Notice that tension. So do you feel it in your shoulders? Do you slump? Is it in your eyes? Do you lean forward? Point? Do you feel like running out of the room? What on your body is telling you that this is still scrubby-oaky land?
Yeah.
And then invite yourself to look at the picture of where's this going to go if this box keeps doing this scrubby-oaky thing to you, dividing into a whole bunch of other.
So you're building a tree for, say, every problem. There's not one tree holding up all the problems.
That's how neurons work. If you think like millions, right? So we make it just one tree, but it's really for every one of these thoughts, you're building a new neuron path where you want it to take. It's not just neurons, by the way. You're also building where blood vessels go. You're building how oxygen travels. You're building new gray matter. I mean, the number of things you're doing in your brain
happening constantly
all the time.
That is mind blowing.
And so when a viewer or a listener can say, okay, then what is the step number 3? Look, what do I look like with acceptance about this box?
Wow.
Acceptance means I don't have the money to get that car repaired. So acceptance means who do I talk to? How am I going to do this? Sometimes it solves the problem. Sometimes it just lets you sit up a little straighter and take your exhale to be able to say, I'm not in danger. I'll figure the car thing out.
Right.
And then these guys, the negative tree doesn't have to fire so much because you're not in as much danger.
So acceptance helps you solve the problem.
Helps you solve the problem or get to your better state of mind that tells you you're not in danger.
Got it.
Some people think they get to step number 3 and they haven't solved the problem, so that hasn't worked. No, we just first got to let the mind know, new tree, not in danger.
Right.
So the client comes in and she says, I got to build new trees because I am just off in these scrubby oaks of dangerous poison oak.
Yeah.
And how do I actually build stronger trees? So notice the tension is noticing the negative tree, whether it's noticing the tension or the complaint or what. And I don't want that tree to grow anymore.
Wow.
I want this new tree of thought to grow. So I want to start doing gratitude more often or not complaining, or it's all kinds of things. It's taking care of my body better, getting better sleep. There's all kinds of things we could talk about there too, of how we build these better trees.
Yeah.
So
wow. That is good stuff. I had no idea I was going to be a landscaper today.
You are a
here
landscaper.
In the studio.
And we'll do another podcast about how to trim things, but that's another.
How to trim them, man. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining us today with the Brain Lady. I just want to encourage you to like and subscribe on all of your favorite media platforms. I also want to encourage you to follow us on YouTube. And also give a big thanks to the Podcast Layer Network. I am super excited to see you guys on our next episode.
And don't forget any of those things.
Yeah.
Sit up straight. Get your exhale going. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Wood.